Hello everyone, it is another planning session, planning period with Teach This Teacher. I'm Wesley Glosson and I'm so glad you're here. If it's towards the beginning of the year, you are probably teaching 8th grade Social Studies SS8H1, which is our first history standard. I've got my sticky notes here ready to go. Let's talk about how to teach each element of the standard. So element A in this standard is all about Native American culture in Georgia before European contact. Please help students to understand that we're talking about the culture before it was influenced by the Europeans, mostly the Spanish, the French, and the English. So what you're going to do is to help students understand that the Native Americans at the time, we consider it the Mississippian period. There were other periods before that, archaic, woodland, and each period in Native American history had different aspects of their culture. Some were more hunters and gatherers, but by this time of the Mississippian period, around the time of European contact, the Indians, the Native Americans in Georgia were mostly they weren't travelers. They had actual villages where they stayed month after month, year after year. We're no longer in the time when the Native Americans were moving with the buffalo herd and teepees. So that's important because one of the parts of the standard that you're going to have to teach them is that Native Americans had homes, and you're going to show them the different longhouses or the huts that they were in. There's lots of pictures that you're going to find to show them the shelters that they lived in. You're going to go over how they had food. Again, they weren't just hunters and gatherers, but now they have horticulture, agriculture. They can actually grow. They're stable to where they're growing crops throughout the season. Corn being one of their main ones, but lots of others like squash, beans. A lot of these are in your teacher's notes, which is available on Godot or Georgia Department of Education through Inspire. And you're also going to just really help students understand that Native Americans at this time had a very structured society. They had chiefdoms where, just like today, there was a neighborhood with a city square. There were places for the public to gather for religious ceremonies or recreation. They had a government structure. Most Native Americans, of course, were in the lower class, the working class, but they had a structured government. Too many times, Native Americans are portrayed as if they were savages, as if they didn't have a real structure. One thing that I like to do is play the Pocahontas music, a song, and I can't remember what it's called, but you can look it up, and it's where she's basically saying, "Who's the savages, me or you?" We do these, and I use that as a conversation starter so that students can challenge their misconceptions that they might have about Native American culture. So that's the main part that you're going to get across to them, is that Native Americans at the time had structure. They had chiefdoms. They lived in villages with neighborhoods that were very organized at the time of European contact. You're also going to go over the weapons that they use. This is a time to have students bring in arrowheads that they might have, or at least to find pictures of arrowheads, pottery. This is the time to bring in those things. Let's move on to element B. Element B in SS8H1. Say that 3 times fast, I dare you. This element of the standard is going into the aims of the Spanish and the English, because they did have two slightly different aims that they had. These are the two European countries that were exploring the area of southeastern United States. So have students understand that the Spanish were not trying to set up a permanent colony in Georgia, that they were mostly interested in finding gold. And that's important because it's going to tie into your next element, Hernando de Soto, but just have them understand that the Spanish's interest in Georgia was not to set up an actual colony so much, but they were looking, I call it the three G's: God, gold, and glory. They were trying to spread their religion, which the English, that was not their purpose of coming to the colony of Georgia, to spread religion. They were trying to, again, find gold. Again, that was not the English mission. And they were doing it for the glory of traveling and traversing this newfound world, which is going to tie perfectly into Hernando de Soto, because Hernando de Soto started in Florida, went through the state of Georgia and many other current day southeastern states, dying along the Mississippi River. But the point is, he was on the move because he was trying to find treasures. So understand that. Also, this standard talks about missions, which if you're not careful and you don't know exactly what that is, it can trip you up. Have students to really understand that missions are what we would today call a church or a cathedral, that it was a place that was set up along mostly the barrier islands and the coast of Georgia. The teacher notes says as far inland as current-day Valdosta, but along that eastern coast, they set up these religious centers, and the purpose was for spread of Christianity, of Catholicism. And so what they would do is use those as their centers, their bases, and they would have young men live there and do missionary work, go out and try to convert the Native Americans, but that's where they would live. Kind of, in my mind, this could be totally incorrect to most historians, but in my mind it's like a convent. It's where they would live and then they would go out. Now, the missions were also used to bring Native Americans to them. So they were more than trying to spread their religion, but they were also trying to spread their culture. They would force or coerce Native American men to work at the missions for several months out of the year, so says the teacher notes. And this was a cause of contention with the Native Americans, because have students understand, if some new race of people came here and they said, we're going to take your sons for several months out of the year and bring them over here. So it was a way to also change their culture as well. Let's go over Hernando de Soto very quickly. Hernando de Soto is one of the very first Europeans to step foot in current day Georgia. And he had a mostly negative effect on the Native American population, passing very deadly diseases like smallpox, wiping out hundreds, thousands of Native Americans all over the southeast, those Mississippian Native Americans. He is also credited for introducing pigs to the region, and he was on the search for gold. Native Americans were sending him on what I tell students is a wild goose chase. They would say, yeah, gold that way, and send him on his way. And he just went all over the southeast trying to find gold, eventually dying in, again, around the Mississippi River. So the important part about Hernando de Soto is his negative effect on the Native American population, his search for gold, and the positive part that came out of his voyage is that we learned a lot about Native American culture through his journals that he kept. For example, to tie back into element A about the culture of Native Americans at the time of European contact, we learned a lot about their chiefdom system through the journals of Hernando de Soto. The English, their goal not gold with a D, their goal was to establish a longer lasting colony to feed, basically, the mother country. With all those people jammed into the United Kingdom area, they needed a place to expand, to grow crops. And so remember that England had a very mercantilism was their driver of their economy, where they took raw goods and produced them. And so Georgia was another way for England to expand and to grow crops. And we're going to talk about that in the next standard. What were the crops they wanted them to grow for their economy? Another reason that England established a colony here was for religious freedom. I believe it was the Highland Scots that were seeking for religious freedom, and that's one of the reasons they came here, and of course the opportunity of a new life. So let's move on to element C. Element C is all about Hernando de Soto, and so I basically already covered a lot of that. But you also want to talk a little bit more about missions. Let me tell you some things about missions that I did not talk about. The missions, well, really the only part I didn't talk about is how that system ended. And that system ended based on the English, mostly from South Carolina, stirred up the Native Americans to raid the missions, because you need to have students understand from the very beginning, from SS8H1, that the Spanish were mostly down in Florida and the English in South Carolina, so Georgia was going to be a buffer state. And so that tension was there, and they would encourage, each European country would encourage Native Americans to join their side, and so the English encouraged them to raid the missions, and so they became very unsafe, and the mission system crumbled. And the Spanish were basically run out of Georgia that way. Look, there's a lot that I left out. This gave you a quick dose if you don't have time, but if you do have time, go read those teacher notes, SS8H1, and they also have pictures that you can pull into PowerPoints and to show students as well. I have great resources for SS8H1. I have gallery walks. I have an assessment for you. I'll put all the links at the bottom, but I have lots of good resources to teach SS8H1. I hope to see you on the next video. This was a great planning session, and I hope it made your knowledge and your planning for this standard a little easier. Thanks everyone, and I will see you on the next Teach This Teacher video. Bye.